subscribe, share. Listen, comment. Let me know what your thoughts are.
Trick Jerk Marinade gives your meats and vegetables authentic Jamaican jerk flavor. The spices are directly from Jamaica. Spices like jerk seasoning, allspice, Scotch bonnet pepper, fresh scallions, thyme, ginger, and garlic. The key ingredients to a great jerk marinade. 0% sugar and low in sodium. You want to try it?
Made up of 18 Jamaican herbs and spices, add delicious, bold flavor to your next grilling experience. Flavoring sauce, a marinade, basting, condiment, or topping. Trick Jerk Barbecue Sauce.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to another of I Am Sure Sports program. It should be a good discussion. I'm going to be joined by my guest who will bring in the stream, Andre. Andre, how are you doing?
I am doing very, very good, my friend. Couldn't be better.
You're doing well. Even after what transpired recently, you're still doing well. It's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm doing well because I've been in the game a long time, and I know that I can't influence that situation. You know what I mean?
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah,
I heard you on Cataract talking about the game the other day, and you seem to have just been gloating versus having a grown-up analysis. I wanted to do that. I want to have a grown-up analysis, a brief synopsis of the game that transpired between Jamaica and Trinidad, but more importantly, talk about the two upcoming games tomorrow.
Right.
With Trinidad versus the U.S. and then Jamaica versus St. Kitts Nevis.
Right. Let's welcome a colleague and very good friend of mine, Kendall Reyes, who has a very good football mind, has a long history in the game, and his contribution would be nothing like our good old friend in Cataract.
Hey, Kendall, how are you doing, Kendall? Great to meet you. I don't think we have ever met before. Kendall, can you hear me?
Well, thank you, Stan and Andre, for having me on today. My pleasure.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Before we jump into the discussion, because as I mentioned before at the outset, we want to talk about the
yes, I can hear you.
Sort of a highlight of the post-game analysis. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it sounds like it's a little delayed, Kendall. Talk again.
So I'm delayed or Kendall is delayed?
Yes. No, Kendall. I think Kendall is a little
Kendall,
delayed.
Go ahead, Kendall.
No, I think he's a little delayed. Could you talk? Just say something so we can hear.
We can hear him, but he's going in and out.
Yeah. Go out and come back in,
glad
please.
to be here. I can hear you guys well.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
well, let's go along and see what happens.
Well.
Hopefully, Kendall. Yeah, okay. He can hear us, but I think his stream is like mine because my computer crashed before I came on.
Yeah, I think you should go out and come back in, Kendall. Let's see what happens. Disconnect and connect again.
So I'll just remove him and then you can come back in. We'll remove you and you come back in, Kendall.
Yeah.
All right. Hopefully come back in better. So I had a question before we jump into discussion, the post-game and pre-game, which is what happened to Trinidad football?
What happened? That's a very that's a discussion that might be a stream by itself. And one of the things that I think happened is, okay, so I don't live on the island, but I pay close attention to what is happening because I'm heavily invested in Trinidad football. And one of the things that happened is that I don't think that we are realistic about, sometimes you have conversations and people push back a narrative that is not that bad and it's not, I think the football went in the wrong direction. The after Mr. Warner was no longer in charge of the football, the football was taken over at a national level by other entities, and I think the resources that was there during his tenure was no longer there. to the extent that it was. I think the whole infrastructure of football began to struggle. The league, the professional league, went under in 2018, just before the pandemic, and I think part of and then the pandemic came along, which, look, you often hear the pandemic caused this and it caused that, but the whole world experienced that, and the whole world survived that. I coach in the US, and a parent was just reminding me recently, about 2 weeks after the pandemic started, we continued to develop players. We used the resources online, we brought them together. And what I didn't know at the time, while I was thinking football, I wasn't even thinking about the mental side of it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that idea that the pandemic destroyed football, I think is one that it shouldn't have it didn't have the same effect in other parts of the world. Let's put it that way, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of things went wrong in the development of football, and it's just a struggle to recover. I think there can be better accountability, like I've often said on this stream, that what the YouTubers have done in Jamaica is that they've held people accountable, not allowed
Right.
people to behave as though the game belonged to them. And I think that is the results of that is what you saw recently in the game 2 days ago. That's part of it. And I think when we tied and beat Jamaica in Jamaica recently, I think my comments, it's great. I'm a Trinidad and Tobago fan. I'm a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, but I think there's a long game, right? And this is part of the long game that Jamaica. It's not perfect, I'm sure, but they're getting their act together, and I think we have a lot of work to do in that regard. And I don't have all the answers as to what went wrong. I know Kendall contribute to that as well. We hear just up to today, there's a youth league in the central part of the country. Games that were supposed to be played today and tomorrow were canceled. That's the youth league, and it was canceled, by the adults over. I'm not sure, but what is being shared, it seems as though, well, I've spoken to a couple of people about it, so I think I can't be too off course with it. I think it's stuff that can be avoided. So what happened, to answer your question, is that I don't think people are working together in the best interest of the football. I think we can have a little more ambition, and we can work. Jamaicans have ambition. Jamaicans want to go to the World Cup. Jamaicans want to win the Gold Cup. Jamaicans want the best players in England that's eligible to play for the country to come and play. They want a good coach. I'm not saying we don't have it, but I don't know if we have it in the same way. To make the human investment, the capital investment that you guys are making as individuals every single. I don't know if you could add to that, Kendall.
Yeah, Kendall, can you hear him? I think Kendall is going to another stream. You want to wait 1 second? I think Kendall is changing streams.
I think my bandwidth is hurting a little bit.
So I just remove. We're seeing two of you. Okay, let's see if that works now, Kendall. That may be better.
I'm taking off one of them, so.
Yes, no, that's fine.
Yeah. I think in agreement with Andre, there's a lot of things that took place. Again, if you go back to COVID, everybody was impacted by it. Everybody, had their own approaches to dealing with it, whether orchestrated by governing bodies or governments or whatever. But we're several years past that, and how has those gaps been closed or progress made is still not evident. How much of it has happened. And then the other thing to take into account is the organizational leadership of the association being under a normalization committee as well. So I think there's some real things that have impacted the football. By the end of the day, this is a business. Football is a solution business, right? You're going to run into problems and you have to find solutions. And there's not enough evidence from things I'm seeing or hearing that are strong indicators that solutions or effective solutions have been targeted and presented in order to rebuild the football and build a product that is back to the level of respectability that we once had. So I'm not on the inside, so I can't tell you it's A, B, or C. But from observation and learning and discussions and interaction with other people, again, for a league to be halted the day of games are supposed to be played, you want to understand why did that happen. It's not weather related or something like, you know what I mean? So where's that happen? And my conversation with one of the coaches involved with the team involved today, it was the officials who put out a statement this morning that they weren't going to officiate because they were concerned about being paid or not being paid enough, or so there's all kinds of issues there that need to be rectified.
I do think the whole football. There are a number of countries that are having football challenges, right? Interestingly enough, you see more recently Canada,
yes,
invest in their program, and you see the monies that they've talked about, and they're still having money problems, right? So we're not the only ones having money problems. But I would say, and I want to transition from this on, and we probably need to have a whole show, as you mentioned at the outset. We need to have a whole show that talks about this.
Yeah.
But I would say, though, that you mentioned something important, which is the community of football in the Caribbean is not as cohesive as it needs to be. It's not as integrated as it needs to be. Haven't worked as a collective as it needs to. Because if you think about Europe, for example, how Europe operates, and even how South America operates, there's much more of that than then bring resources together, bring competition together, generate resources that can support the football, and more importantly, say the grassroots football. So we probably will talk about that on another show. We definitely will actually at some point,
right,
and a more in-depth analysis as to what some of the challenges are, issues are, and even propose solutions. It doesn't make sense to raise issues and problems without having some proposal, some perspective as to how they can be remediated and fixed.
Fair enough. Good point. Very good point.
Yeah. So let's go to the Trinidad versus Jamaica game. And the Jamaicans are gloating, by the way. I've talked to quite a bit of them. They're really happy. I think they're not just happy about beating Trinidad. It was the manner of the victory, especially given the performance against the U.S. And I do say a lot of times to people, sort of temper how you sort of view those things, because when I view the games in this group, there seem to be 4 different levels, right? There is the St. Kitts and Nevis, Trinidad at a higher level, Jamaica higher than Trinidad, and then U.S. seems to be, to me, the best team in the zone, even though Jamaica has a number of Premier League players that mainly play in their offensive end of their team. So what was your perspective on the game? I'll go to Kendall first, and then you, and then I will provide my perspective, and we can then transition to the upcoming game, which I think is sort of more important, since that game took place a little while ago. So Kendall, your perspective on the game.
I don't know if gloating is fair, but convincing victory gives you enough to feel good about, to be proud about. I thought the Jamaican team, not only on paper, but when they came to the field, demonstrated a level and a quality that is what you expect of a high caliber team within the region. So from a player personnel standpoint, I thought they were outstanding. And their game model, their style of play, it was very intentional. You could see clearly what they were about from start to finish. Finishing could have been a little bit better quality from them, but all in all, I thought it was a quality performance from them. Trinidad and Tobago, on the other hand, look out of depth, in terms of their organization on the pitch. I'm not sure if we understand the changes in the lineup from the previous game, as many changes that were made. Number one, what impact that had on the team in itself. But I think they looked out of depth. I think in one of the commentary I made, it looked like men against boys, and even in the physical dimension, pound for pound, Jamaica was just a tougher, stronger opponent. Trinidad struggled to generate meaningful attacking opportunities, other than the goal that they scored. But I thought that again, it just looked like a pure mismatch for most of the game.
Andre?
I agree with everything Kendall said. What I would add to it is, we're all involved in football and are all leaders in some capacity. And I was at the stadium for the first game, and despite the difficult condition, the rain, the late start, and everything else, the formation that was played, you can see that the guys knew what they wanted to do. I think sometimes as leaders, when you change stuff, and I think there was a change in formation, playing 5 in the back against Jamaica, I think it sends a message sometimes that people might be able to struggle to fulfill the roles and responsibilities, especially that close to, with just a couple of days in between. So I think that could be the answer for Kendall observation, that, the players seem out of sort, because sometimes there can be inconsistencies, players not sure what to do. And again, it's, what does it say if we're going to defend with 5 people because it's Bailey, because it's Antonio, because it's Gray? It may send the wrong message. And I think the objective now is nothing could be done about that other than to recover. I think the job now is to make sure that after that result, that the leaders of the team was able to get the players back into the right mindset, to put that behind them, every single individual, that they did the work that they needed to do, both on and off the field, to be prepared for this game. I'm not comfortable with the idea that Trinidad football is in a place that we have to always pull off a surprise. You know what I mean? I think we need to get to the place where we can go to the games with an understanding among everybody that it's going to be competitive, right? We win the first game, and now we if people are not sure, as you speak to people are not sure what to expect, whether we're going to pull it off or not, and that's a bit challenging sometimes. So I'd like to see our football go beyond that. A win in the game tomorrow would take us to the next group, but what does it mean when you start thinking about 2026 World Cup, Nations League, and that stuff? Does it mean, how does it affect that,
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm used to the Trinidad of Russell Latipi, Stern John, Dwight York. Trinidad producing number of players locally that then play overseas and are very much involved in the program. I was a little bit surprised, even though Jamaica does have the ability to source players that weren't homegrown, who are of real good quality, and Trinidad doesn't necessarily have that same ability, because a lot of Trinidad did migrate to the UK after World War II, frankly, or later on. That Trinidad had oil money, I'd assume, so they didn't have the need to go find resources someplace else. But having said that, you did produce a number of very good footballers from the island. So it's a little bit surprising that that hasn't been maintained and sustained, especially since the narrative nowadays is most people, West Indies cricket has been in a demise because people are moving away from the sport and playing, say, football, for example. So you'd expect football in the region, at least in the English-speaking Caribbean, to be much more promoted, and we're bringing through much more world-class players, because that's where the focus is. Obviously, I don't want to go into the whole concept of idea around infrastructure, But you would think that you'd produce more of those quality players, regardless of how the US source players or Jamaica source players, right? In terms of just their innate ability or developed ability to compete in CONCACAF with the best teams.
I think one of the things that you see happen in countries like Belgium and Iceland and a lot of these countries is that they're able to get everybody on the same page when it comes to the development of football, right? They study what works in any moment in time. They put something together, and the entire country is pulling in the same direction to develop players, to have a pipeline of players coming through. I don't think we have been able to achieve that. I think everybody thinks they have the answer, and their opinion or their idea is the only one that matters. And we have not been able to and this is, again, is observation from the outside and talking with people. We have not been able to sit in a room and say, look, guys, this is what's best for Trinidad and Tobago football. All right. And this is the direction we need to go in. And I think that is hurting us. So your observation there is good. And in the region, and not just Trinidad and Tobago, I think in the English-speaking Caribbean, who from the English-speaking Caribbean survive the preliminary rounds?
That's a good question. We'll see how that materializes, but you're right. It's probably, if I think about it, probably on the Jamaica, isn't it?
Yeah. Well.
If Trinidad
is there, but the preliminary
good outcome against the US, yeah.
Yeah, who was trying to come in, and I think the region, I think CFU has a responsibility. I think the region need to get together and realize that we need to look at football from the perspective of what's good for the entire region.
So Andre, I didn't realize your son that scored that goal actually against Jamaica. So at least you had something to celebrate.
No, not against Jamaica, against St. Kitts and Nevis.
Oh, St. Kitts, okay.
Yeah, I have a lot invested in the football in Trinidad and Tobago football.
Obviously, if your son is on the team. I see this question coming up for you, Kenda, which is, what do you think about Angus's team selection against Jamaica?
It's hard to tell. I mean, what leads to team selection comes out of the training environment. It comes out of the players' individual and collective preparedness. It comes out of the scouting and preparation that the coach and his staff does, and it comes out of the philosophy and approach to the game. So there's a lot of factors involved there. We can all probably sit from the outside and say, well, this one should have been picked or that one should not have been picked. But the truth is that you have to first understand all the elements that come together in selecting a team and game-specific selection. But when I think about the roster that we saw a roster with a heavy a heavy influence of a defending approach, right? So perhaps that's the philosophical approach that the coach wanted to take, or tactical approach the coach wanted to take. I think against a team like Jamaica, and recognizing the quality they displayed against the US, in a competition, you've got to also want to try to win a game, right? Points are important. You already got 3 points. Can you put a team that is solid enough to compete and can generate you opportunities for points? When you don't go with enough of an attacking plan, you're subject to having to try to defend all day, and that's not going to win you games. That's not going to get you points. I also think that the maturity and leadership within the squad is also very important. And when you don't start one or two veterans like Molino and Jovan Jones, I think that's a piece that's missing there that could have made a difference in terms of how the structure of the team went. You go down by a goal, 2 early goals. Who's going to pull the team together? Who's going to help lead the team up out of those moments where you could see shoulders are dropping, heads are dropping? leadership within the team, on the squad, on the field, that becomes important as well too. So again, to say in context of how the team is selected, you have to know all of the factors. But when you look at the structure of the team, 5 defenders, mostly defenders on the field, to be honest with you, that's an indicator that the strategy is to stop the bleeding rather than try to go win the battle.
Andre, same question for you.
Yeah, I think I agree it was a bit defensive, and what I would say is I think again we need to get to the point that this is the way I look at football, where you have to be aware of what your opponent's strengths and weaknesses are, but you have to have your approach to the game that you believe in, right? That you could convince the players that it's going to work for you, and you go with that. I think I'm not a defensive minded coach. I think we had enough. We do have enough quality to be competitive in that game, and you know, when you look at the results, I think everybody would agree we got it wrong. You know, we got it wrong. So there, when you think about football, there's certain principles that must be respected, right? If you look at the first goal, the team got caught in a high line, and there's no pressure on the ball. So the ball that's supposed played into Bailey, it was easy for the midfielder to play that ball in. So there's some little basic things that didn't go right. I think that at the end of the day, the coach has a responsibility to pick a squad and come up with a game plan, a system, but the players also have a responsibility to execute, right? When they go on the pitch, and there was a presence, people were there, but people weren't defending in those moments, and I think everybody got it wrong, and it was difficult to watch.
I thought that Trinidad was overmatched in that game, but I also thought they weren't helped by the coach. What do I mean by that? So you're a very defensive team, but then you try to play out from the back, and there was a mistake made on maybe the first or second pass that was made that Lambert, I think, intercepted, almost caused a goal that Bobby Reed missed, actually. And you thought, and Jamaica likes to play from the back also, even though we're not great at it, frankly. But when we played against the lesser teams, we look good because you get more room, right? That's like normally you get more room, you can dominate, play more, you look good playing so. When you play against the better teams, or your opponents are almost similar yoke, similar quality, it's a much more difficult proposition to do. So I thought Trinidad tried to play from the back, got caught twice, and still tried it throughout the game versus say, you know what? I'm going to shore up the middle of the field. So if you want to score, you have to come into the middle of the score. You can't just score from out wide. And I'm going to close off the passing lanes, like you mentioned, to the front four, because the U.S. dominated the game against Jamaica by keeping the ball away from us. You don't have the ball, you can't beat the game. Your front four can't get supply of the ball. So how do I keep the blocks locked in the middle, close it off? You have to go wide to come in. And I try to hit you on the counter, if that's possible, because what normally happens when you dominate position is you get complacent. Everyone trying to go forward, they think they can score. You create opportunities and vulnerabilities in your team, and then teams get a chance to score against you. My perfect analogy is in the UK, Spurs against Man City, because they keep beating Man City because, you know what? Man City keep attacking. They thrust 9-10 players forward, and Spurs have attacking players to catch them on the break. So I thought Angus could have done a better job of really trying to close down the passing lane, like you mentioned, and try to hit us on the break. But I still believe when you match up the teams, because sometimes no matter how much this coach's strategy works, it's challenging when players are just better quality, better trained, play better as a unit, even though the Jamaica team is what I call, for lack of a better word, colloquial, a pickup team. But the pickup team is getting more time to play together. And Trinidad was the second game, and they get more familiarity with each other. So it was an interesting game, frankly. I thought Jamaica came out of it feeling good about themselves, and I thought maybe the opposite for Trinidad. So as we transition to the games coming up, Andre and Kendall, what are your thoughts about the U.S. game? What does Trinidad have to do to get a positive result?
Well, I think the first and probably most important thing is the psyche of the players in terms of how have they been able to recover from a heavy defeat from Jamaica within the last couple of days? The psyche of the players in understanding not just the caliber of the opponent, but it coming up, but the next stage for them. Are we looking? How do we get to the round of 16? And so there is some implications from the result, right? You got to win this game. So in a must-win game, how does that impact the psyche of the players? I think that's the first place that you would start with. And then secondly, again, how do you construct your personnel that would give you an opportunity to do that? We just talked about whether you're playing with a defensive setup with the intent to counterattack. If that's it, then that's fine. Or do you go with a little bit more offensive minded to try to put the U.S. on the back foot? That part of the strategy obviously is going to come down to, again, how confident is the coach himself feeling, and can he provide the players with that level of confidence in, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we're up against, this is how we're going to do it, and can the players concentrate, can the players execute individually and collectively to pull a result that they need. If there's any reservation, it's not going to help them, because the U.S. is a team that's very solid from back to front. They're top of the group. All they need is a point, and they know that, do they want to top the group? Do they need to score more goals? I mean, whatever it might be. We don't know if they might change their personnel being at the top of the group. We see that often happens in tournament competition, that they might rest some key players. We don't know. But Trinidad and Tobago has to have a positive mindset going in, because it's a must-win game for them to go to the next round.
Andre?
Yeah, I think I think the formation, the system of play that was used in the first game, I think they probably need to revert to that, because it worked with the pieces that they have. I think what was missing, in my opinion, in the first game is that we just didn't get close enough to people. So you have to get close enough to people, make them uncomfortable on the ball. And when we have the ball, we got to make use of it. So there's got to be a balance in terms of the quality of the players that we have in the team, in terms of defenders and attackers and everybody. There must be absolute clarity on what the objective of the team is, the different lines within the groups and each individual. So everybody must be clear about what their roles and responsibilities are, and they go out and execute it to the best of the ability. The game must be played as though it's the last game in our lifetime.
Right. What's the differentiation between the U.S., and I'm going to say the English-speaking Caribbean, excluding those I'm going to call players from overseas who come to these teams, because obviously we all know the U.S. program probably over the last 20 years has grown exponentially because of resources. But are the players just technically better? Is it their system of play? Are they more organized? Because when I see them play against countries in the region, even against Mexico more recently, they're dominating. Whatever team they put on the field is a team that's working really, really well, dominate possession, even against Mexico sometimes, no matter which team Mexico puts on the field. And we know Mexico has a strong league, probably 7th, 8th best league in the world, well-compensated league, and yet they're struggling with the U.S. now. So, and the U.S. doesn't seem to have better athletes, even though they have much more diversity in the team than they had historically. As we know, Kobe Jones sometimes was the only, and Beasley were the only people we know of, say, color in their team. Now it's a very diverse team. So what do you attribute to them sort of differentiating themselves and moving away from others in this region, at least in Central, Latin America, and the Caribbean? And what can we do to catch up?
It's multi-pronged, and it starts with a vision. If you guys recall or are aware that way back in like 2000, the U.S. had a program they created called Project 2010. And that was created with a vision or intent in mind that they could win the World Cup by the year 2010. So it's a 10-year plan, okay? And within that plan, there's tons of different things that were introduced to the game, building a proper professional league, expanding our coaching education, player development, allowing the teams to compete at the younger age groups internationally. And there's so many things that took place. Obviously, having two distinct advantages compared to other teams in the region would be the resources to do a lot of those programming, and then the depth of access of a player pool from a sheer number standpoint. So even though they haven't yet gotten to that Project 10 goal of winning a World Cup, but that certainly was the vision, and they've worked towards it. You remember 2010, they got to the round of 16, they got to the quarterfinals, right? So at least they were headed in a certain direction, and were putting the pieces in place that would allow them to at least try to achieve that. I would say some of that is reflective when we look at the Jamaican women's national team, when we look at the Haitian national teams. They sort of do the same thing. When we look at Venezuela and other countries, there's certain things that they have done in terms of planning, organization, structure, and execution towards elevating their programs that needs to be done throughout the region. But certainly when we talk about Trinidad and Tobago, I don't know if that has actually been done. And you have sporadic levels of success rather than a continuum. And that's the thing with the U.S. The U.S. has been, for the most part, on a continuum of elevating the game across all floors. I mean, we're looking at the C team for the most part, right? Competing for a Gold Cup within the region. So what does that tell you? There's a lot of depth. There's a lot of progress that's been made, and now that same ideology, that same idea of wanting to. I've had some conversations saying, can Trinidad and Tobago be consistently ranked in the top 3 within CONCACAF? Well, that might sound like a big ask, but it's a goal that I think from an organizational standpoint you should be pursuing and putting all your resources and pieces in play to be able to do that, rather than looking at it from the other way and say, well, there's already 3 top countries, or 4, 5, 6, 7. So where do you fit? And if we can't touch the top 3 because we don't have all of it, but we take care of the next 4, then we're right there at number 4. Qualification and everything else that we want to be able to enjoy qualifying for World Cup 2026. You have to have a big vision, a big plan that requires all hands on deck, not just in financial capital, but human resource capital that are contributing internally and externally towards that goal.
Andre?
Let me first say, Kendall, I'm a fan of Jamaican football. A lot of my friends are Jamaicans. So don't put me in a position to get into trouble when you say Jamaica is Jamaican fans believe they're going to win the Gold Cup. And so if you say that the USA is playing with their C team, and I reference that in the future, it's going to be placed on me. So let's just say that that's the USA team. Let's not say ABSC. They may not have some of the good players, but
you know what? But if that's who they put on the field, that's who they put on the field.
Yeah, but they would not like it.
I don't think that C team is playing to not win the Gold Cup, though.
Don't get me in trouble, because that would be minister, and it would be hard to keep that back. Look,
but by the way, those of you in the audience, please hit the like button if you like the program. If you don't like it, well, I can understand that. But if you like it, please hit the like button. Go ahead, Andre.
There's nothing here to not like. So, so look, what Kendall has just said, it has been proven you need a strong league, a strong local league, to help your national team, and we don't have that at the moment. Coaching education, it's going on. It needs to continue. It needs to improve. And I know a lot of work. We had the Anton Cornell, the individual who is responsible for coaching education in the region, on, and he had the opportunity to talk about what he what he was doing, and he talked about, the convention and the work that they are continuing to do. Right? We need. There's so many pieces that need to come together. We need the people, the public. We need the different institutions in the country. We need everybody to be on the same page before we start talking about what happens on the pitch. What happens on the pitch could never be right if they aren't funding, if the surfaces that people train and play on, the food that they eat, the accommodation when they get together, all of that stuff must be taken care of. And then to create a performance environment, we need to have, the coaching staff need to have everything that they need, the right support, right? No one person coaches a football team, especially at that level. So you need people that is very good at what they do in different aspects of the game, so that the players could have the right support. We see it every day at football clubs at the club level. So there's so much pieces missing that I don't know if it's fair to have an expectation. I'm with Kendall. I believe Kendall and I had this conversation already. I believe that Trinidad belongs, right? In the top 3 or 4 in CONCACAF. But right now, I can't justify that belief. Right? I believe that if we're doing everything that we're supposed to do, from strengthening the league, we have a league right now that just started back, that ended in 2018. The league was being run with subvention money from the government. We started back the league in the same situation. In the same situation. The league needs sponsorship. The league needs proper playing surfaces. You need players to be professional footballers, not because of how much they make, but the environment. You're coming to work every day. You need to. So there's so much that need to improve right now that there's a lot of work to do, and everybody needs to get involved. Everybody needs to get involved.
What's your response to Tennessee Lewis's comment here about the locally in Trinidad? Do people think the players who are locally based would do a better job than those who are in the current squad?
Look, I think that's a what do you call that? I don't know that it's. I don't know. Do a better job. What is the job? And there's a guy who's playing in the Caribbean, is he having an experience, an exposure on a daily basis that allows him to be competitive at the international level, right? There's nobody from the JPL right now in the Jamaican national team. So you had a coach came in January, I think it was it? And he's been on the island, he has watched the JPL, he has made himself aware of all the players around the world that he probably that is eligible to play for Jamaica. And he picked a team, and Jamaica have a league that ran, that had fans, that was exciting. It came to a very good ending with the stadium was packed with the game between Cavaliers and Mount Pleasant, right? And he picked a team that's all foreign players that, not foreign players, but Jamaican players that play out of the country. And I think there's a reason for that, right? I think the exposure that they get, the competitive level, what they do on a daily basis, I think it's different. I think it's a different environment. And he believed that they're more conducive to be competitive at the higher level at this moment, right? The league in Jamaica have to run. I'm sure everybody would agree it have to improve. Everybody would agree the league in Trinidad have to improve. So I think the people that is saying that they can do a better job, that may not be taking all of the things that we would consider as far as football is concerned. And this, people would be offended by this perspective, but you can't, it doesn't compare.
Yeah. So let's transition to Jamaica against St. Kitts tomorrow. What are your expectations after that game? Obviously, if the US beat Trinidad and Jamaica beat St. Kitts, it comes down to, I guess, goal average or goal difference. And I'm sure Jamaica is going to try to score a lot of goals tomorrow. In fact, Jamaica would be cheered for Trinidad, probably one and only time, to do well against the US tomorrow. So what's your expectation of the Jamaica versus St. Kitts game?
I know
and
some
ask you
Jamaicans
first,
that always
Andre.
cheer for Trinidad, so except for when we play Jamaica.
That's probably true, actually. That's probably true. Or we're not competing for the same outcome, actually.
Yeah.
Positive outcome. So what's your thought about Jamaica versus St. Kitts tomorrow? I'll start with Andre first and then go to Kendall.
Okay.
Look, the Jamaica versus St. Kitts. You expect Jamaica to win the game. You expect Jamaica to win the game by a few goals. The US was not able to score more than 6. And there's probably a reason for that. You know, I watched St. Kitts against Trinidad, and again, it's different competition. And you look at them and you could see what they were trying to do. I feel that there's something there, but maybe it's not enough. They may be able to put up a resistance, but not much of a resistance. So I think Jamaica is going to win the game. It could be. I don't like to determine that games are a foregone conclusion. If that's the case, if we were so certain that Jamaica will win, then we're wasting time. Let's not play the game. You understand what I'm saying? Let's just move on to the next rounds. So the game has to be played. Jamaica has a better squad. We don't know what the coach is going to do. He may make some changes in anticipation of the round of 16 game. So if he does make those changes, how does it affect the team? Right? How does it affect the performance? So I think until we see what he does, if he plays with the front 3 or with Bailey and not front 3, but Bailey and Antonio in front and Damari Gray on the left side and what's the boy name on the right side, then that's Bobby Reed. That's going to be challenging for St. Kitts Nevis, right? They're going to put up a fight, but they may not have enough to contend with that. But if he make changes and he put those guys to rest, there are good players that are sitting on the bench, but that could interfere with the dynamic of the team and make scoring goals a little bit more difficult. And you're struggling to score goals right now. You score 4 against Trinidad and probably miss 4 in the second half alone. So
and missing empty goals too, which is concerning, frankly. Kendall?
Just in tandem with what Andrew just shared, I think the game has to be played, obviously. We don't want to negate that at any point in time. On paper, again, we would think Jamaica has shown that they're a quality squad. They have depth in the squad all the way into the bench. So even if some changes come, you would still expect a high level of play from them. But in tournaments, it's quite common to see coaches rest players going into this game when they've already qualified for the next round. So that could take place. But I think the other important piece to note is finishing at the top of the table. And if that is important for Jamaica, then I would imagine it's not just a question about getting the points, but also making sure that they score enough goals. Just on a side note, I think Bailey could use some extra practice polish up his finishing. But
so this is coming from a Trinidadian, by the way, because Jamaica
use a little extra practice.
Bailey's a polarizing person, not what he creates, but in terms of how people in Jamaica view his performance. There's some who love Bailey and his capabilities.
I think Antonio himself could do himself a favor and get 1 or 2 as well. But we don't know. Yeah. We'll see. I think they would be the favored to get a positive result. Can they score enough goals to top the group and without the result of the US Trinidad game factoring at all? Can they just go ahead and get it done? I think would be the question. and they have the quality to do it. So I would anticipate that could probably be the outcome.
Well, it's interesting because the games are being played simultaneously, right? They're playing at the same
Correct.
time.
Yeah.
So therefore, you can't manipulate the outcome. And most teams, well, not most teams, but some people believe that you have to manage outcomes to have an easier path, a supposed easier path, right? You want to play the second place team in the next zone because that may be an easier game. What are your views on that? Do you think you should just play to your best each time, regardless of what facts and circumstances are? Or do you think you need to really set yourself in a way where you're playing the team that is not first in the next zone? Because if you come second in that zone, you probably end up the Canada-Mexico route versus another route. So what's your views on that?
I think that when you play tournament football, you've got to go in to win your games. And I don't think you should be trying to manipulate where you end up, whether you end up first or second, because at the end of the day, if you're going to win in the final game, you're going to have to beat potentially the best teams around you. So I believe you play, you try to get the best outcome, and you just prepare to deal with whoever is in front of you. You've got to believe in what you do, and you've got to believe that you can beat everybody that's in the competition. Everybody.
Kendall, you have the same view?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the next round is knockout, right? So it doesn't matter who you meet, you're gonna have to win a game, right, to go ahead in the competition. So the idea is, while you think that if we finish second, we meet this one, and finish first, we meet that one, where it's easier. The next round is never really easier. The next round is winner go, loser go home. So you have to have the right mentality. For me, as Andrew is alluding to, is every time we step out there, we want to perform at a high level. We want to perform to the best of our ability to get the best result that we can. Going into the next round could be just polishing it up for the next opponent.
Because if I could add to that, what happens when you start thinking about results and whether we should finish here or there, I think it affects the mentality of the players. And as you play these games, you are expected to get better as you go along. We should see, not because it's in kids, but we should see a clearer picture on what Jamaica is trying to do football-wise tomorrow, not because they're playing a team that is quote-unquote weaker, but because they're now playing more games together. Okay, and I think you can see that progress from if you want to take this period in time from the Qatar game to the Jordan game. We know the Qatar game didn't have a lot of the guys in it, but you can see improvement as the team go along. So, but the game have to be played, and I think you can't take that for granted, because if you take that for granted, you might be scrambling to get an equalizer in the 89th minute.
Yeah.
And then
if you think about the Trinidad team, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I said YouTube gonna blow up.
You're right about the Jamaica team, which is a number of the players that have the reputation came back from vacation, whether it's Bailey or Antonio or Bobby Reed.
Right.
So they hadn't really played football for a couple of weeks. They probably had maybe one practice session. So we'd expect them to get their win back and also to just get more familiar with their surroundings, actually. So it should be interesting to see how they progress through the tournament. Questions for you. In terms of the Trinidad team and the Jamaica team, any players that have sort of stood out to you that are differentiators? Let's think about the two teams. Let's think about Trinidad first, because obviously there's a question about the Trinidad team and the players and how well they're playing. Any players that differentiate themselves, and similarly for the Jamaica team?
You go first, Kendall.
Over the course of the two games, Trinidad and Tobago, I thought that the youngster Aubrey on the left side, I think he's shown some good quality. I think Levi Garcia has. I think Andre's son has shown some quality in the first game as well too. For Jamaica, obviously Gray has been outstanding. Their center backs are very good. They have a very good goalkeeper who hasn't totally been tested, but in the U.S. game, I think he did a very good job. So, coming to mind that I think those would be some of the players who have shown or who have stood out so far. Yeah.
Andre?
I think I'm going to start with Ajani, and I'm speaking as a football person, not as a dad. I think I heard on Fox Soccer before the game, one of the analysts said that if Trinidad is going to make a run for the World Cup, that Ajani seems to have the quality to play an important role in that. I know he's a quality individual. I know Atlanta United is taking good care of him. I think if Trinidad put the right things in place, he could certainly be useful, in Nations League and in the World Cup qualifiers. Rampersad, I think for me was interesting as well. I like his work rate. He works really hard, and he has a physical presence in the middle of the field, and he's pretty tidy with the ball as well. So I think he was one that I haven't seen much of, but I thought he was pretty solid in his performances over the two.
Okay. What about the Jamaica team?
Look, the guys up front are the guys up front. I think Lowe, I thought was good, especially in the first game against the US, getting a yellow card very early in the game. I think his ability to get through that game without getting into trouble shows, a certain mentality and emotional intelligence and all that stuff that helps you remain in the pro game, get into and remain in the program. And as well in the Trinidad game, he had a tremendous physical presence. So I thought he was good. I didn't have expectation one way or the other, but he kind of stood out to me. And the guys up front, Gray was very, very good. He was very, very good in the game against Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, I watched Gray. So you read about the players you mentioned for Trinidad, and of course for Jamaica. I thought Antonio did a good job of bullying defenders, especially against Trinidad, frankly. Didn't get a lot of chance against the US game, but being a presence up there, occupying one or two defenders. I thought Gray was good, but I thought what he was really good at was really how composed he was and how well he bring the ball down so it gives him time to make decisions, right? Sometimes people are fumbling with the ball. They get the ball. They're not bringing the ball down quickly and position the ball so they can survey the field and make decisions. I thought he did that really, really well. You read about Lowe and also about Blake, but I thought Lambert, who much wasn't expected from, defensively did a decent job. Not necessarily offensively, but defensively was a presence in the middle. And the hope is that going forward, you'll see those and other players step up actually. But my concern for Jamaica is in the middle of the park, frankly, because you're playing almost 4 forwards in your team. And so you basically have 2 midfielders, and people may not realize as much.
Yeah.
And therefore, you're going to have some gaps in that middle. And against the better teams who stack the middle, they're able to exploit that. So it'll be interesting to see how things progress. As we go forward throughout the tournament, actually, first of all, do you expect Trinidad to overcome the US tomorrow?
Quite, Kendall.
It's do I expect? I don't know. I don't know what to expect. A lot's going to ride on, as I mentioned earlier, on the mental, psychological approach to the game. A lot's going to depend on their tactical approach to the game. A lot is going to depend on their ability to play for 90 minutes plus at a highly consistent level. So a lot's going to depend on that. We hope they get a result, but it's going to be a very challenging game I expect for them, but I hope they're able to rise to the occasion.
And we talked about this earlier, but any differentiating thing the coach can do tactically to really try to at least manage the game well.
Right. So
we mentioned this a little bit earlier about.
Yeah. So his personnel is going to be important. How he puts the team together is going to be important. and how he instructs them to play on both sides of the ball is going to be important, especially in transition. The U.S. is a very good team in transition. When the ball is turned over, defending transition is going to be critical. Can we manage the counterattack? Can we slow the game down, manage the game in those moments? Going to be very important. Defending from wide areas on the field, I think, is going to be very important for them based on the way the U.S. attacks. So there's a lot of things that I think coming into the game that a coach is going to have to reinforce. And then for me, he's going to have to show those guys, hey, guys, you got to believe in me. And he's got to show that he believes in what he wants done. Their belief level has to be off the charts. And it has to come from the coach.
Andre?
Yeah, he just threw that question up. Can I just...
No, but I'll answer the question first, and then we can go to this. I put this up for a reason, to follow up with the facts about what's the tactical thing you can do to get a good outcome, and then we can talk about this point that was made.
The personnel has to be right, okay? And what is the right personnel? Kendall mentioned Jovan Jones, Kevin Molino. Look, I like Kevin a lot. Kevin is the captain of the team. I think Kevin have a big role to play. But when we look at the intensity of the game, and you look at the fact that Kevin has played about 14 minutes with
Columbus
in the MLS with Columbus just this season, just 14 minutes, and I think he had 45 minutes just before he left with the USL2 team. You wonder, does he have the game readiness, right, to come out and compete in the way in which in the way in which the game would demand, right? So he has to get the personnel right? He has to be able to get that right. He's got to put everybody on the same page, and you've got to make the game difficult for the U.S. People must not be allowed. Footballers are really, really good when they have space, because space gives them time and they can do whatever they want. You have to eliminate that. You have to keep the head down. You have to keep them going back towards the goal. And when you get a hold of the ball, you've got to make use of it. I think if we allow them out of possession, when the U.S. is in possession, if you look at the last game, there was a lot of space that I refer to as dangerous space behind our back. If you allow them that, then they're going to exploit it. I saw them just a couple nights ago. Who did they play against? St. Kitts and Nevis, right? It wasn't as much space, and they were exploiting it very early in the game. So if you give them that much space, you got to take that space away from them. You got to keep them in front of you. And you got to get close to them. You got to fight them. You can't allow them to settle in the game and get comfortable, because I believe, Kendall mentioned C team just now. I believe in this moment in CONCACAF, they're more athletic than Mexico, and just about any team that they put on the pitch, they can have success in the region. That's where they are at the moment, right? They have a very strong league. They have a lot of players playing in Europe. So the depth chart is just ridiculous. So it's going to be a tough game. It's not, as I said before, the games could go in either direction. That's why the game has to be played, right? The game could go in either direction, and if Trinidad get it right, then maybe there's a result.
It's interesting because I would, if I was Angus Heath tomorrow, I'd probably start my defense just over half line, because the U.S. seems immune to pressure. When Jamaica played and Jamaica tried to press, it didn't work. All they did was spread the field out and play the balls between the lines and play the ball, just get by Jamaica defense. So the question, one is, do you make the field shorter so there's less gap between your three lines of defense, right? Your forward, your midfield, and your defense. You narrow the field down real well, and not necessarily allow them to attack, but allow yourself to, first of all, not chase, because it's going to just tire you out. And second, when you win the ball, when you turn the ball over, it's getting them quickly. If you try to press the U.S., to me, it only creates more problems for you. And so to press them close to their 18, Because when they get behind you, then you're scrambling to recover. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think taking away space from them to be able to play in behind you to get at your goal, that makes sense. And in transition, you're attacking, you lose the ball. I think it's basic football. Kendall would agree. Your first objective is to get behind the ball, get compact, okay, and work as a unit to try to recover the ball or to steer the opponent in the direction you want to steer them in. So what we're talking about is nothing special, right? At the end of the day, it must be executed, as Kendall said earlier, for 90 plus minutes.
Yeah. But let me add a point to that, right? If that's the strategy you want to use, there's something that is going to be very, very important, which is having a number 9 who can hold the ball up for you. And from what I've seen and know of his style of play, I don't think that Garcia is the guy to do that. So personnel selection, again, is important, but you've got to be able to have someone who can hold the ball up to get the midfield support into the attack when you come out of that low block. That is going to be critical. So again, getting the personnel right is going to be really important.
And having a little bit of patience after you win it too, as opposed to trying to.
Yeah. What's your view on West Point here? He says, actually, Trinidad is a team on the rise. Trinidad used their second half side from the first. Jamaica may have some challenges. I'll put it in my own words. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't think it's a valid observation, because Jamaica has done some things different in the second half. In the first half, they came out. They pressed. They certainly came out with an intent. They did that, and any team that was on the pitch probably would have suffered
similarly,
right? In the second half, they went in, they leading 3-0. They came back out, might have been a little bit relaxed, might have taken the foot off the pedal a little bit in that moment. I think the coach made a reference to it. You have something to lose now, so the game is about moments. He referenced it, and sometimes you get into those moments and you get a little comfortable. So that allowed a little more space that existed in the first half. So I don't know that I agree with the observation that that if you had played the second half team in the first half, that things would have been different. I don't agree with that observation.
No, Kendall is shaking his head.
I'd have to agree with you, Andre, on that. Again, that is a supposition at best, right? Because the score of the game at that point in time, it's dictating how everything else is happening. So, you're up 3-0. Is Jamaica still playing with the same level of intensity as they did in the first half? Probably not. So it's really hard to say that beyond it being a supposition. So, yeah, I agree with that.
So here's a question for both of you. So most of the teams in the Caribbean, including Haiti, seem to be really sourcing talent from overseas. So overseas nationals who have lineage be part of their team. Trinidad doesn't have that source of talent. I know you were rich at one point, literally rich. So you probably need to export human capital, but because Grenada, with the same kids, Haiti, everyone seems to be able to go. Maybe not Cuba, for example, who probably were like you in some respects, but those seem to go overseas to game. In the U.S. does that, and we're talking about the MLS. They went to get Balogun. They tracked him for 2 years. Same thing with Musa. Even though they have a league, and we talk about this, maybe their BRC team, they're still trying to source talent because obviously they want to win the World Cup, right? That's their goal. And we just probably want to get to the World Cup first, then think about progressing further. So you don't have that talent, whether it's in the US, England, or any place else in the world where you can also try to bring into your national program?
Let me say to the people in the comment section, Kronke and Kendall is the one who is referring to the US team as a B or C team. if Jamaica wins the CONCACAF Gold Cup, and that happens to be referenced in the future, please don't hold it against
Andre's throwing us under the bus. Andre just left us, Kendall. Andre just
the US team. You guys say the BNC team.
I think he's misinterpreting what I mean is the quality of depth in their player pool. allows them to go CD.
So look, our system is different. I think you have to be a direct descendant of, your parents is what gets you the paperwork. They've been all over the place with that, I think. But look, you have to do the work. You guys are doing the work. You guys are doing the work right now. I just saw a colleague of mine was just at a major tournament, a national tournament here in the US with, thousands of kids, teams, and the Mexicans had a staff there dressed in the Mexican kit, looking for players for their girls team, looking for players, right? They're scouting. All they call up, they ask questions. They want to know if there's anybody that is connected to Mexico that they can, and they'll invite them in, right? They have somebody just asked a question earlier about the local players being able to do a better job. Once we stay stuck in that space, we'd never be able to realize the full potential. We want the best 23 people to represent the country at any point in time, right? And it should not matter whether they play on the island or not. If we keep thinking that only the people that play on the island can represent the country, then that'd be a problem. And I think Jamaica deals with that a little bit, but I think most Jamaicans want the Michael Antonio and the Damari Gray and those guys to come in and represent the country. So once those questions keep being raised, then it becomes difficult. But we have to do the work. We have to go in search of the players. They won't come to you just like that. And we've got to make it possible that we can get players citizenship easy. Even at the youth level, you hear people wanting to come and play for the country, and they seem to struggle to get it. I didn't have that struggle, so I can't really speak to that because I got mine beforehand, right? I know that my boys wanted to play for Trinidad, and we got that sorted. So I'm not sure. It's difficult, but we have to do the work. We have to go look for the people that could represent the country all around the world. We got to scour the leagues. You have a guy like Cataract who can sit here on a show and just call names after names. Who's at Arsenal? Who's at Newcastle? Who's where? In the Premier League, in the Championship. I mean, how is he accomplishing that? We need that for Trinidad and Tobago as well, because as you mentioned, Haiti is doing it. Guadeloupe is doing it. Dominican Republic is doing it. Everybody seems to be looking for the best resources they can find.
Well, it's interesting because, YouTubers sometimes get a bad rap sometimes for how they operate. And sometimes it's deserved, frankly. But one thing we say about YouTubers and people who are just fans who are passionate and patriotic about their country, like a Cataract, for example, is that, and Devon Port is also another one, which is they'll go out and go look under a rock to see if somebody has Jamaican lineage, and they'll try to bring it to the general public, or maybe to the JFF, because frankly, the JFF hasn't done the best job. Obviously, JFF is Jamaica Football Federation, in terms of how they come up with a database of players who are eligible to play for Jamaica, right? It is local personnel who have basically done that groundwork to bring those people to notice. And now we're seeing a much more structured, much more thoughtful process to source that talent. So do you have individuals, Jamaicans they're now being populating the airwaves in terms of YouTubers. And obviously everyone is trying to compete in this space. And that brings out, that's good actually, because competition will allow people to try to differentiate themselves. So do you have YouTubers in Trinidad who are doing similar work to what Jamaicans are doing, who can help to influence your football federation? Because even though Jamaica Football Federation may say, no, we're not influenced by YouTubers, frankly, they are, and materially, because they're creating more transparency, they're providing much more suggestions to address issues. Does Trinidad have anything similar that's happening in the background?
No, I said before that I'm not a social media guy. I have, it's not something that I'm comfortable with, but I started doing this because I see it working for Jamaica football, and I watched it for a while, and I got introduced to management, and he allowed me the opportunity to come on, and we had some football conversations, and my hope is that it would get the interest of somebody in Trinidad, some people in Trinidad who would start doing it themselves, right, to hold the football, because the developments today, that should be out there. That should be somebody's priority, because these are young people who spent the week at training, working, looking forward to playing the games this weekend. They went to bed last night to get up this morning to play, and to find out that they're not going to play, not because there's a storm, not because there's bad weather, not because something, it's because it seems as though the adults can't agree on financial situation. So, and that we need people that's going to have those conversations and talk about those things regularly, just like you all do in Jamaica. But those people have to be, they have to want the best. Trinidad is set up a little bit different. People seem to be afraid to have conversations about the things that's happening, not just in football, about anything, because, the trump card is, if you criticize somebody, you're against them. If there's an opportunity to victimize you, that might be the outcome. So it's just, it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, right? Because everybody want to be able to get what they want when they want it. So I don't know if anybody is gonna start doing it, but I'm gonna try my best from this space and see. It's difficult because most of the people listening here is Jamaicans, but I do know that it does get back to people. I do know that. I have had some conversations where the fact that we were able to get Anton Cornel on, right, is because he heard about the program. So I knew that some people was listening.
Well, I just saw Everton Jackson's comment here, which basically saying the standard of playing CONCACAF has risen and continues to rise. Any team in CONCACAF that is not trying to source talent from better leagues overseas is way behind the 8 ball, which I can't disagree with that viewpoint, actually, which is, it's across the world, right? If you think about African countries, for example, that supply human talent and capital to like France and those countries. Most of those players go back and play for, their mother country. So that's normalized now in today's environment.
Well, let me jump in and say that I alluded to earlier.
Ricardo Baggio, maybe you can share that information. That might be good information. And this is a case in point, right? We don't know anything about them, but just by having the conversation, somebody is offering up potentially a kid that could represent the country. So I don't know. And again, there's been some uncertainty about the citizenship, the paperwork stuff. A young man got it the other day. It seemed everybody suggested that he wouldn't be able to get it, and he get it. So we're not sure what the situation is, but this is good. So maybe you can share that information.
Right. Sorry, Kendall, you were saying?
Yeah, I was going to say, I alluded to some time ago in a conversation about having a national plan and, a vision and those mechanisms that could bring it to light, and the use of human capital. And this is a clear example of how human capital could impact the growth and the development of what's going on in the game. And in addition to, you have to take a serious look at the local structure and how are the players being brought up to standard, and or opportunities for them to get out to be placed in other environments that can help raise their standards. So it's twofold. Sourcing is one, but what you're doing on the ground with players is the other one. You have to do both. And the human capital, that comment that just came in, that's use of human capital. Everywhere you go in the world, you can find a Jamaican. Everywhere you go in the world, you can find a Trinidadian. Every place in the world has a Trinidadian. so you can reach out, you can create a system like you guys have been able to do successfully so far, whether it's on the YouTube platform or however, by having appointed conversations that are raising the issues that are pointed towards how do we make it better. That's all it is. And it's not me personally or Andre personally, but collectively, how do we as a people, as a nation, make the football better? How can we contribute? What needs to be contributed towards that goal? And I think that's where a lot of the conversation really needs to be moving, but not just in conversation, but in action as well too.
Yeah, I do think social media is a forum and a medium where there's so much information out there that can be channeled and collated and get to its destination, when before you didn't have that ability to do so, right? Someone can come in a forum like this and mention that I have, kids, they know good players who play someplace, who may have lineage and affiliation with another country, maybe to bring it to someone who have access to the administration and bring them through the process. So I think social media can be a medium one can be utilizing to frankly help source players for countries, because everyone is trying to source players. And I think at this point in time, we're in 2023, and the 2026 World Cup is upcoming, and the top 3 teams in the region are going to have automatic qualification, and their 3 slots open. I would think every administration should be doing their darnest to go and source talent from where they get the talent from, and make sure that talent is positioned to help them to qualify for the World Cup in 2026.
I agree with you 100%. 100%. There's a lot at stake, and I don't know if the ball is rolling as yet in Trinidad and Tobago, because there's not much conversation about the World Cup, which I think would be unfortunate. But you're right. Somebody has to be focused on trying to figure out where are the best players. And, the media, the journalists need to get involved. I can tell you that I don't mean to criticize the journalists, but there are a lot of times there's one prominent journalist, Lasana, we had him on here about a week ago. But there are times when you wonder, if their players, there's no forum in Trinidad that reports on the players that is eligible to play for Trinidad on a weekly basis, right? These players are playing in leagues around the world, and there's nobody reporting. So the fan base don't know the players. So a lot of times people are having conversations about players that they don't know. You guys are pretty up to date on your players. You know the players. You report on the performances when the weekend come, whether it's on this forum or others. Plus, you have your regular media. So I think this is working for your football. So the Jamaican fans are aware. They have the opinion sometimes, right or wrong. I think everybody opinion is everybody should be allowed to have the opinion. Whether they're right or wrong is a different story. But it's working, and we don't have that. We don't have that. People seem to be afraid to have a conversation because nobody wants to offend anybody.
Well, it would be sad actually if come qualification, which is starting next year, if Trinidad couldn't put a competitive team on the field. Because I'm telling you, every team in this region is really gearing up. Because, Kendall mentioned this about the need to really develop your local program, which is an imperative actually, because we have most of your personnel residing. And frankly, even if you use overseas talent to help you get to the World Cup, the resources you generate is going to be invested back, hopefully, because we know how Caribbean countries are, hopefully be invested back in your infrastructure to help build grassroots football. So the hope is that teams would position themselves to get into the World Cup, because we know the benefits are significant when you do get to the World Cup.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think again, you come back to how is your football association, your administration, your leadership? How do they view those things? Because we could sit here and talk all day, but if they don't have that same view, And if they don't have that same impetus towards what it means to qualify for a World Cup and how it would impact the game and the country as a whole, I think if that's not in their deck of cards, then you got a real issue. And but it has to be. We know what kind of value qualifying for a World Cup can bring to your country and bring to it. Now, Trinidad and Tobago went to 2006 World Cup, but we saw a decline for various and sundry reasons. So I guess it's a misnomer to what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, if we understand the impact of qualifying for a World Cup, financially and otherwise, how much of an impact it can have on the future and the sustainability and growth of the game going forward.
Do you agree with this comment here about risk down?
So there's I don't know if it's a tough one, because I can tell you I have two kids that have played for Trinidad, right? And so I can't say that they won't welcome into the setup. I think the fans have a different opinion in terms of they want to see the local boys, and it doesn't matter whether or not the local boys could be competitive. So I'm sure there's some of that, but I can't. As far as the football authorities go, they showed up. They were given the opportunity. They were good enough, and they made it, right? And they played. This is in part right. I think it's in part right. It's a difficult one. I don't know that people have to show up, and no kids show up at the youth level. And the coach's opinion was that some of them weren't good enough for, and that's opinions that coaches come to every single day, whether the player is good enough. So I don't know that they were rejected. You see, I do believe that if you're going to come from the outside, you have to be better than what they have locally. I don't think just because you're coming from the outside means you're entitled to play for the country. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can't bring somebody from the outside with lesser quality than what you have.
What if the quality is equal?
If the quality is equal, so let's look at it this way. If the quality is equal, and when we say the quality, there's the footballing quality, there's the mentality, there's a lot of things that make up. So let's say that all of the things that make up the player as a whole, right? And you have a player that's playing in England, for example. I don't think it's possible to have. It's possible when you at this current moment. I don't think you can't be playing in England and be equal in ability from a mentality perspective. It just I don't know that it's possible, right? So it's either you're better than what they have or you're not better than what they have, and I think it's the same for Jamaica. If for some reason it's equal, and this is how I know sometimes it's looked at. If for some reason they're equal and a guy's already playing in England, well, then you give the local boy a chance. And I've heard people even here make that argument that it's better the local boy get a chance because maybe he get a chance to get out, right? So it's a complicated one. But I don't think anybody should be suggesting that if you're not born in Trinidad, then we don't want you to represent the country. I think that's kind of that's an uninformed perspective, I believe.
I think Jamaica has had the same situation. It's been a debate for a while. Those debates sort of go away when you're winning, frankly. If you're winning and winning convincingly, frankly, after a while, that dissipate because people realize people want positive outcome for their team. I would say you bring up a good point, though, which is around, I'm going to use a colloquial term. People think you're taking food out of the local player's mouth.
Right.
If you're bringing in overseas players who may have been in a better environment, economic-wise, and you have a local player who may want an opportunity to go overseas and generate income for his or her family, that you're not giving them the opportunity to do so. I do believe, though, if you source the best talent for your team, you go up the ranking, you get more prominence, you get better friendly game to generate resources, you can invest back in the local program, you get better coaches, then you can be more of an equivalent level to compete. Because when you go compete on the world stage, it's all about talent, right? Whether it's talent with management, talent with coaching, talent with players. So if you don't have a better talent, you're not going to have positive outcome. So how do you manage both situations well enough to allow you to advance your objectives, which is I want to be the best at what I do on the world stage. I want to give opportunities to local players, but I also want to source the best players in my program, and they may not be local.
Well, one of the things that people who has those perspectives doesn't understand is that if a successful senior national team could fund the entire pyramid of football, right? Good. So if you're saying that you want to pick players that may get in the way of the national team being successful, then you are thinking short term, right? And all the young boys and girls at 14 and 15 and whatever age you start putting the national team together, you wouldn't be giving them a chance for the future. So I think it needs everybody, right? And we need the people that is responsible need to have a clear, make sure people have a clear understanding. And again, that is why these forums are important. So somebody in a position of power in football should be able to get on one of these, because the major networks are not interested in this, and have a conversation and say, look, we are interested in the best players to represent Trinidad and Tobago. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you're one of the best players, if you're one of the best right backs that we can find, you would play, right? And that also gives the young players an incentive to work to be better. Because sometimes people come together, you bring a player from outside, he's in camp with a local player, they meet up, they strike up a relationship. Sometimes, you never know. People help people get into other spaces. So there's all sorts of benefits that people don't think about. I think it's an uninformed perspective, I think, to think that you don't want people from the quote unquote outside.
Your perspective, Kendall?
Yeah, again, it falls in line with what I've been saying before. I think when you have a strategic plan towards obtaining certain goals and objectives, I think it all kind of ties together. So there's no coach that I know, I've coached for a long time, that doesn't want access to the best players possible. There's none. They want the best players. We look at the EPL and the transfer window, and what do you think is going on there? As good as a coach that Pep Guardiola has proved himself to be, but he's also doing the work to get the best players, right? And how players come into his program that's going to impact the program. You think Manchester City fans care that every player is from Manchester City? They don't. They want the best players. So it's no different. And then you have a network, a mechanism in place that allows you to be able to access the best players. I think that same idea needs to happen in the Caribbean countries, in Trinidad and Tobago in particular, that need that. It's just something that has to be an integral part of your program and operations. It just has to be.
Interesting comment here by A.M. Henry, which basically is saying Morocco's team was mainly made up of players born outside Morocco, which is the same nowadays for a lot of different countries. But there seem to be better affiliation with those countries and their local communities, actually. There seemed to be that sense of belonging to the motherland for some of these players in Europe, for example, who are from Africa, for example. Morocco is a perfect example. Some of those Muslim countries, because they sometimes don't feel accepted where they are, frankly, in Europe, and feel a much more affiliation with those countries. And the question for us, actually, especially given proximity to the Caribbean to the US, which is, what effort have we truly made to synchronize the relationship apart from, remittances, frankly, that goes back to the Caribbean? What sort of association do we sort of create to have that synergy. It's almost an embiotic type construct and relationship between the diaspora and the countries of the Caribbean, for example. You know, if you had that connection, frankly, you feel that sense of encouragement. You feel that sense of that you would be accepted. You wouldn't have that differentiation. And I think about Israel, for example, and like if you're of Jewish descent, you automatically are citizens of Israel, for example. Right? I think about those things and how you make it easy for those who are of the same lineage to be part of your community as a country, especially when you're challenged with resources, for example, right? Whether it's intellectual capital or even funding. How does one create that affiliation and association, which goes beyond sports, to bring a community together? And I'm not sure we have done that well as a people, right? I think we're sort of, people migrate and they go their different ways. So they don't have it. Some go back and they have connection. A lot of people don't. But I do sense that there's more of an affiliation with, for example, the Moroccos and the Egypts when people migrate to go back to their home country and play for those countries. Not sure if you guys have the same sense of perspective on this.
I agree with you on that. I've been around people from different parts of the world, different cultures, and I think sometimes I wonder what makes it so difficult for us to, you know, you just mentioned Israel. I was listening to a guy from Israel one time, and he said, "Look, I can go anywhere in the world I go. If I need somewhere to sleep, it's not a problem. Somebody from my country would let me into my house. If I need money for transportation, they'll make sure I have money. And it's just a different approach to life, I guess. You know, and sometimes it seems as though it's different. It's different with us. You know, we've discussed a lot of topics in this forum over the time, and one of them that keeps sticking out at me that I'm unable to get a proper understanding of. I know there's a problem. I know there's a big problem. But to speak to anyone about the problem has been difficult. Transportation between the islands in the region. And all I believe I was able to find out is that the transportation is the way it is. Someone can't leave Trinidad, fly to Jamaica tomorrow morning and come back tomorrow night or the following day. If they fly on Monday, they might have to come back on Wednesday. And supposedly that's because the leaders in the region is unable to come together to make transportation easier. Now, why is transportation a concern? It's affecting sport. It's affecting football. It's affecting easy movement among the region so that the youths could go play and develop and get exposure and that kind of stuff. So it's expensive. It affects a whole lot of things. So I agree with you on that. I think you're right about that.
Well, I think it affects commerce also significantly, frankly. That's why countries want to have good infrastructure and good roads so you can move goods and services. So people don't seem to realize. And I don't think the Caribbean has done the best job. You know, we have CARICOM, but it's done the best job of how the regions sort of come together across all aspects of how, as a society, we operate. Whether it's trade or people or resources or sports, I'm not sure we have come together enough. As we see, like in Europe, for example, which have one economy for a number of different countries. We see England pull out of that with Brexit and all that, but it's interesting. We're almost at the end of the program. Any last words? I'm going to go with Kendall first. Any last words, Kendall?
Let me answer Mikhail first before Kendall go there. No, I still don't know where to find the Trinidad gear to buy online.
Oh, no?
It's how long did it take you all to sell out when it came out in January?
I don't recall how long, but I can tell you this: when Umbro was our sponsor, our gear sponsor, I would go in Manhattan here to go buy a jersey. I couldn't find one. Mm-hmm. The other day, I wanted to buy a Jamaica jersey. I went to the Adidas store. There were jerseys there, a different size too, right? They were available, which was really, really good. And so, because I used to have to go on Amazon to go find it, there was normally some old jersey on Amazon. But now it depends on who your sponsor is actually to create that availability and that easy access to acquire merchandising.
Well, and the reason why he's asking this question is because I was, making the point the other end. And in Trinidad, they would find this to be critical, right? But if you do a parallel deal with a company, part of that process is for you to make money, right?
Right.
It's for you to make money. And in order for you to make money, people must know where to get the product. So when you roll that out, you have to let people know where they can purchase it. You have to make it available. And I believe I saw the national team wearing Capelli before it was announced. Right?
Okay.
You guys
Right.
on this forum was able to unpack the deal that the JFF made with Adidas, right? The Jen Sek, I believe, came on and discussed the deal to the extent that he could discuss it, and he spoke about the launch date and everything else, and it sold out in an hour, according to Mikel. So that just didn't happen with us. You know what I mean? That just didn't happen.
Yes.
So things like this, because that's a revenue source. It should be.
Yes.
Hopefully the deal was done good enough that it's a revenue source, right? And these are little things. All of these things need to be fixed to get the football on the pitch right.
Look, Andre, that's not a little thing. That's a big thing, because revenue has been discussed, has been an issue with the Federation, and revenue generation is a big thing, right? So rightfully so, if a deal is struck and with whoever apparel company is, it is understood to be a revenue stream, and a revenue stream is very important to your program. So it's not a small thing at all by any means. It's a big thing, and your administration has to be cognizant of those things in its operation and its wherewithal. That would be my position on this particular topic. So
right. Yeah. So as we're coming to the end of the program, if you're in the chat and you like the discussion, please hit the like button. So Kendall, any final words as we think about the games tomorrow? Anything else you want to put a perspective on before we conclude?
In conclusion, I would just say again that I hope that the Trinidad and Tobago coaching staff gets it right in terms of personnel, that the players are mentally, psychologically prepared to go to battle, to win a game, to get them to the next round. And certainly that Jamaica continues with the success that they've had so far. Yeah.
Andre?
I want to say to you, I want to have the first interview with management when we return. I want to also, in that interview, I want to understand how it is. I think we might need to call the Guinness Book of Record. I understand that he got a yellow card at a game. He's not part of the coaching staff. I really want him to discuss that with us. So just know that I'm asking for if he's listening, I want the first interview to talk about his experience. It sounds like he's having a good time as well. But look, we just want, there's many people like myself, I know Kendall is as well, just want the country to do well. Want there to be opportunities for young people to go on. You want to put the television on when the day come and see Trinidad and Tobago players playing in some of the top leagues, whether it's here in America or in England or Holland or Spain or whatever. And it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen if we don't get a lot of things right, so that we can develop the talent and we can have a product on the high end that people would start looking at us. People would want to look in again and see who's there. Is there another Dwight York? Is there another Stern John? Is there another Russell Atapi? And many others. And there are many others that people didn't get to see because they came before their time. We've had some really, really good players. I grew up looking at some really good talent in Trinidad and Tobago. But we need There's talent all over now. The market has opened up, right? And, you know, if you want to go to college in America, you're now competing with a kid who spent 8-9 years at a club in Spain or in England or somewhere. At 18, somebody doesn't give him a contract. He says, I want to go to school. He looks at America and he's calling coaches every day. So the market is different. So you have to prepare players to be competitive, right? We have to be able to do that on the island. We have to give them opportunities to come out. Kendall and I, was part of a coaching school that allow many people to leave the island and go to school in America. And at that moment, I think that was a good thing for people, right? And we need to continue to provide those opportunities and give the young people a chance. And it would not happen if we continue down the road that we're going.
Yeah, you're right about that. You know, historically, it's almost like the Caribbean had a monopoly. And for example, going to college based on athletic scholarship from the Caribbean to the US, for example, the world has opened up significantly. You don't have that monopoly anymore. And similar with the MLS, a lot of Caribbean players got to the MLS. Now they're sourcing from all over. They're getting bigger. They're going to try to source the best talent. MLS team is now valued at £900+ million. We then say you're going to source the best talent to improve your squad, to also make your asset appreciate, which people don't seem to realize. And I think part of what we need in the Caribbean, and going my little soliloquy here, is much more thought process around how do we invest in the region? How do we invest in infrastructure? How do we work better together as a community to improve the product? Because when one country improves, the whole region improves in some way, shape, or form, actually. And how do we have the leadership in the region, that they leverage leadership both within and outside the region to come together as a community to not only advance sports, but just holistically advance what we do as people. I think that needs to be done. We don't do enough of that. My hope is that even though some people may denigrate social media, that social media be the catalyst to help change some of this. Because sometimes elites think they have a monopoly on intellect and they have a monopoly on how things work in life and what needs to be done. And frankly, intellectual capital is spread out everywhere. It's got to go out of sources, bring together, collate it, and have it flourish. So my hope is that we'll see forums like these and other forums sort of bring people together, have the discourse, leverage people in the comment section with their ideas, information, and use that to influence, inform, and distribute and disseminate information to help all of us do what we love to do, which is talk sport, watch sports, but most importantly, win, or allow us to be able to compete and win. And it also provides benefits some people economically and otherwise. So hopefully we'll see more of this. And I want to say before I go, which is thank everyone who was in the chat. Hit the like before you leave.
Before you thank them, the score, I think the overall score is 26-26. We are even now. The all-time record.
So Andre, I wouldn't even go there, Andre, because think about Andre. The gap between the US and the region is increasing, and the gap between Jamaica and Trinidad is increasing. So that 26 is gonna.
Well, what I'm saying, though, let me finish. What I was going to say is that I hope we don't see each other again until the gap has closed. It will be a more competitive fixture.
So here's what happened, Andre. So we went out and got a coach who's has a great resume. And what he has done is sort of bring some credibility in that environment. And you talked about it before, relationships and contacts.
Yeah.
So he can go to Europe and go to England and talk to a Frank at Brentford, for example. He can go talk to individuals. Players respect him. And I'm telling you, the recruiting process has just started. It's from where I sit, actually.
Yeah.
It's just started. It's only going to get better. Now, some people are going to get displaced because you're going to recruit better players. But my hope is that even the displaced players will realize they have to up their game.
Yep.
And it's going to only help them to get into better teams, generate more income for them and their family. It's going to help the region holistically, which you're bringing better players. And here's another thing, too, before I go, which is this. When you're bringing in players, you have to leverage those players, leverage their contact, leverage their resources to help the local, right?
Yep.
To help the local environment improve. And we haven't done a good job of that. Players come, they have good resources, and they go back to where they come from versus, you know what? Bring them into the fold and have them be truly a part of the community. Sorry, Kendall, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback you and say that credibility that your coach has brought and those relationships with those clubs is actually an opportunity for him, for the local players to leverage that relationship as well too, because if he's seeing them hands-on and he's seeing improvement, he's also in a position to help move those players out into those other environments that he might envision that, hey, you know what, if this player could get into the championship or into a certain level, he can better serve us down the road, get him into the environment. So that your coach, the leveraging that coach's relationship with those other spaces can work in tandem and positively for the local player as well too.
So I
totally agree. Go ahead, Andre.
I try to, it's a very thin line. I try not to get too far into Jamaica's business because I understand what it means to be a guest, but there's two players that, and one would assume that if the coach comes from Iceland and two players go to Iceland, then maybe he has something to do with that, right? So
yes,
there's that benefit, but I think overall what he has brought is leadership. And again, I don't want to get into Jamaica's business, but there's been a situation that has caused a lot of angst among people. There's been lots of discussion, heated discussions, and he has come in, and this surrounds Whisper and others, and he has come in and he has handled that situation credibly with Mr. Butler, and he does not seem to be on one side or the other. I think he's just looking for the best talent, and what he has done so far right now, he has basically crushed that situation, it seems, from where I'm looking at, right?
I think what he's brought, yeah, you're right about that. What he also brought is that sense of independence. He's not conflicted.
Yeah.
He's coming, all he wants to do is win, right? And he's going to try to get the best resources to allow him to win. He doesn't have relationships. He doesn't have conflicts that he has to manage. He doesn't have a history. Right. He's going to be agnostic to what's happening around him, be independent, be objective, and that would allow him then to make the best decisions. And the Whisper decision, which I actually support, by the way, even though we said the kids only play high school football, the kid has signed with Chelsea, and I'm sure they scouted the kid, right, to bring him into their program, even though I would tell you I don't think he should sign with Chelsea because he gets lost. You go to Chelsea, somebody get lost, but it's another story for another day. But he signed one of the best teams in the world. So they must have seen something in the kid that's so differentiating to bring him into their club. And therefore, the exposure he's going to get from being around professionals who operate in an environment is going to be invaluable for him, especially want to be part of your national program going forward. So we'll end with the Whisper note. Kendall, thanks a lot. Appreciate you being here. A lot of wisdom. Appreciate your input and your insight. And Andre, as usual, always a pleasure.
Yeah, same here, Kronke.
Thank you.
Right. Very much. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And I'm sure we'll follow up with Manning's man about why he would get a yellow card.
Yeah.
When he's not even on the bench.
Yeah.
Take care, everyone. Thanks.
All right. Take care, man.
All right.
Bye-bye.